Dr. Savine, it's 6:30. I'll let you when we're ready. We could go ahead and get started.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cropper. I'd like to welcome everyone to our rezoning study information session number 2. I want to thank Mr. Cropper and his associates for working through this process with our committee. Certainly want to extend my appreciation to all of our committee members for their work over the last several months, and I look forward to receiving feedback from the community as we move forward tonight. We are prepared to take this feedback and make additional adjustments before we move forward to the school board.
Thank you, Dr. Savine, and thank you all for coming. I think what we'd like to do is we have a presentation here for you this evening that we'd like to go over. And just a few things before we get started. This is a Zoom webinar. And so we do have the opportunity to, you as attendees have the opportunity to ask questions. And you could, if you look at the bottom of your little panel, you'll see a Q&A button in there. As we're doing our seminar or this webinar, we'll be looking at the questions that are posted in there. And following the presentation, we'll go over some of the questions and do some questions and answers. So if you have any questions through the course of the presentation, please feel free to include those on there. And if it's something that needs clarification at the time in context and I catch it on the screen, it's something that we can certainly clarify at the moment. But we'll make sure that we review your questions. And so that's just something that you have, and we'll do that following this. So let's go ahead and get into it. Sean, are you there? Okay, thank you. So the purpose of tonight's public information session are 3 key things. What we want to do is review the process and timeline. We want to introduce and review these draft options, red, green, and blue. So we have 3 options that we've been working on with the committee over the past couple of months. We've worked through the course of several options, and we've modified options, and we're bringing these 3 options, which are a modified, reduced number of maps that the committee feels ready to share with you. And we also then finally want to talk about some opportunities that you have to provide input and how you can provide input for that we need for this process. Before we get into that, a little bit about us. We are Cropper GIS Consulting. We are a K-12 planning firm based out of Ohio, but we have remote offices. Our staff works from home, and so we have offices all over the country. You can see this on the map shows all the different locations that we've worked in on the East Coast, the eastern part of the U.S. And so we've got a lot of experience in doing this work, rezoning plans and demographic studies, just the kind of work we're doing in Frederick County, we've done for school districts all over the country. I am Matthew Cropper. I have over 20 years of experience in doing this kind of work, and I have been managing the project and facilitating the work. Also, I have with us tonight Sean Dowling, and who has been an analyst who's been working with us and developing options and working with the committee. And Sean's going to go through over a few things here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sean Dowling, like Matt just said here. So I'm going to go over a couple background things here with the project, starting with the background and objectives. So the reasons for doing this project in the first place, they're going to be building a brand new middle school here, brand new and expanded R.E. Ayler Middle School. We're looking at currently overcrowding at James Wood Middle School as well. and at Admiral Byrd Middle School. So this project is designed to create a zone for the new Ayler Middle School while also addressing those overcrowding issues, alleviating those overcrowding issues at the other two middle schools. Now, a couple of years ago, Frederick County Middle School was impacted by a rezoning project. So we are trying to avoid impacting them as much as we possibly can. Hopefully, we don't impact them at all. That's our goal. So those are our two primary objectives for this project. Now, whenever we do any of these projects with any district, the district provides a set of criteria for us to follow. Of course, Frederick County is no different here. So we do have the official criteria listed here in the presentation. Go over that here quickly. They're not listed in any particular order of importance. We are trying to address them all to the best of our ability. We're trying to balance them all. Starting with balanced building utilization. We want to have all the schools at a similar percentage of capacity at the end of this project. We want things to be balanced out. We don't want one school to be overcrowded, another one underutilized. Try to balance things as much as we possibly can. Of course, the county is growing population-wise, but it's not growing evenly in all areas. We want to take that into consideration, take a look at increasing attendance in high growth areas. We also want to keep future capital projects in mind, in particular, in this case, the building of the new middle school. And it is important to note that when we are working with capacity, we're looking at brick and mortar capacity specifically. So we're not talking about or taking into account modular classrooms or any kind of temporary space like that. We want to the impact on students. Ideally, a certain number of students are going to have to move no matter what we decide to do here, but we want to minimize that as much as we possibly can. We want to take a really close look at an individual child's career. We don't want them to have to change schools or change zones more often than necessary. We want to be very sensitive to economic, cultural, ethnic diversity. We want to look at how that's balanced across the schools, much like balancing utilization. We want to balance diversity across the schools. And we want to take a close look at special needs populations, make sure that in accordance with best practices, that special needs populations have the resources that they need at each school in which they attend. Similar to impacting students, we want to minimize the impact on the communities, the families of students. We would ideally like to keep all the students from a given neighborhood or community together at the same school. That's where public feedback and the work of the committee is particularly important, is gaining that local knowledge to know what constitutes a community or a neighborhood. So we can avoid splitting those whenever possible. Next criteria is similar to that. We want to, if we do have to split something up, we want to make sure that it's based on clearly identifiable community components. Feeder patterns, which we'll go over a little bit later here. That would be how students progress from one grade cohort to the next, such as from elementary school to middle school. It is necessary sometimes to split those, but when we do so, we want to try and do it in a way that is well balanced, close to 50-50, as opposed to having, say, a small group of students breaking away from a larger student body when they graduate from elementary school to middle school. So we take a close look at those feeder patterns. We try to keep those as clean as we can when we're building these options. And last but not least, of course, all of these criteria are one is not more important than the other. We're looking at transportation efficiency, particularly bus routes across the county. We want to keep travel times down. We want to keep costs down for the district. We want students to be going to school as close as possible to where they live. Definitely want to use major roads and natural boundaries when defining attendance zone, using that physical and infrastructural geography. We want to take a close look at major roads, intersections, that sort of thing for kids that are walking. Or in high school. This is a middle school project. Kids that are driving in high school, we want to try and make their routes safe when they're traveling to and from school as much as possible. So we have a pretty standard process, always adjusted to the needs of the district here. For Frederick County here, we have a 4-part process. data collection, analysis, and assimilation, preparing for rezoning, options development, and the committee and public engagement. So we'll go over each one of those steps here briefly. So it starts with data collection. When we start these projects at the very, very beginning, we send out a request to the district and to the county. Typically, we're working with county level government. We ask for GIS data, which is just any kind of geographic data that we might need, such as roads, school boundaries, location of school buildings, that kind of thing, and a student database from the district itself, which we then geocode, which means that we locate where the students live, so we have an idea of where they go to school. Helps us take a look at transportation issues and that sort of thing. So that's a big part of the beginning of the process, but data collection actually is ongoing throughout the entire process. Even after we get that initial data and start creating maps, start producing statistics and that sort of thing, we're always getting new data, whether it's from the county or the district, or whether it's from the general public, such as you, responding to the general feedback form that's online. We go over all those comments. We look for any kinds of concerns that people raise. And in the committee, we also listen to the committee members describing local issues, neighborhoods that they're growing and things like that. So we take all of this into consideration throughout the life of the process. So step 2 is preparing for the study itself. And here we have a blown up map kind of showing these where the old and the new Ayler Middle School are located here. So you'll see in the maps that we go over tonight and the ones that are available on the website, everything is broken down into these planning blocks. And we use the planning blocks to create the option. Basically, we shift them from one school to the next. The blocks are always subject for adjustment if they're drawn strangely. I mean, they can be split up, they can be combined. We can do whatever we need to do to make them so that they basically make sense. Of course, things are always changing. Neighborhoods are being built, that sort of thing. So sometimes they have to be adjusted. But when it comes to reading these maps, you'll see these numbers here. There's a planning block ID, and then the number below it, 27 in this case, shows the number of students that live in that planning block. And it is always really interesting to look at the distribution of these. See, this one over here has 1 student in it. Right next door, this one has 97. This one has 143. So these are the basic, literally the blocks that we use to build the maps and the options. We have our online interactive map. This is available to everybody. I actually, let's see, I have it right here. It's croppermap.com/FCPSVA. Type that into any browser, it'll come right up. But as you can see, these are the elementary school zones that are shown here. But you can choose the layers that you want to see. And we'll go over the options later, but I'll turn on the middle school zone. So these are the current middle school zones as they exist. You can use little buttons or use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in. As you do zoom into this map, you'll see that the detail increases. You start to see street names, you see the schools. You get really close here, you'll actually see the outline of parcels. And it will take a second to load sometimes. You can also see, we can turn on the planning blocks. There we go. So you can see the outlines of the planning blocks. You get a little bit closer. A bit closer there we go. Yeah, you can see the outlines of the planning blocks and the parcels. So a lot of detail in these maps. The options are also available. Matt will go over those here in a few minutes so you can see how the shape of the map changes, how it'll impact your family. I don't have an address to use here, but you can enter in your home address and it'll take you right to that location, show you where you're currently zoned and where you will be zoned in each given option. So really good way to quickly look at what's going on with these options here. So let's see, still step 2, but the capacity study. So running adjacent to this rezoning study, we've been doing a capacity study where we've actually been on site studying the individual buildings. This is Mr. Cropper over here. He actually went to Frederick County to interview all the principals, other administrators, take an actual look at floor plans and measurements of these buildings, so that we are working with very accurate data as far as how many kids these buildings can actually accommodate. We had initial numbers that we're working off of when we began the study, and we have continued to update those numbers and are pretty set on them right now. I feel we have a pretty accurate look at what these schools can accommodate. So step 3 is options development. And when we did the first public information session, we didn't have any options yet. That was right at the beginning of the process. But since then, the committee's met 3 times, and we have developed a set of options that we will be going over with you tonight. Finally, there is the committee itself and you, the public. We did assemble a committee at the beginning of this process. We sent out an application to the public, got a lot of great response to that. Chose the best applicants that we felt for the position, and they've been meeting virtually, of course, by Zoom since then. Like I said, 3 times. They've been reviewing the options, giving us a lot of good feedback, helping us develop those options throughout this process. So here's the timeline. As you can see here, we are on 11/10, November 10th, second public information session. We have 2 committee meetings ahead of us still, both of those in December. And then we will be planning on making the final recommendation in January to the Board of Education. That committee meeting 5 on the 22nd, that's going to be when we finalize the options that we want to take to the board. Throughout the rest of the process, though, you are invited to continue to participate via the general online feedback form. And updates since last meeting. Created these 3 options, like I've said, which, let's see. I will now turn this back over to Mr. Cropper, and he'll go over the maps with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. And so as Sean said, we've been working through this process with the committee and developing options. Really, the whole focus of this effort is getting to where we are tonight, up till now. And really, the committee has been focusing on developing a set of maps that they can share with the public, that they feel are viable in terms of adhering to the criteria and our objectives, and bringing a series of maps to the public for more review and feedback from you. As Sean said, tonight we're presenting these maps. We're going to introduce a survey for you guys to fill out, and then we're going to review that survey feedback after this public info session is complete and after the survey window period closes. And after that, we'll be regrouping again with the committee and looking at feedback from the public and the continued study of the maps. And it should be important. It's important to note that we want to hear from you. We want to hear your input, and we expect you to give us input as it relates to your neighborhood or your community or your child, and that's perfectly natural. But know that when we take your feedback in, we're focused on making adjustments that's best for all children in this county as a whole, and not just one community or one student or one neighborhood. And so as we take this input in from you, we will take that into consideration, and we will make changes to the maps if your suggestion brings us closer to our objectives and adhering to the criteria. We've received feedback up till now on things like communities were actually split in the current zones in some maps, and we made some adjustments to try to resolve some of that and align the zones to make sure that we don't split up communities and things like that. And so a lot of the feedback that's been received so far has been very good in telling us what you like and what you don't like about the maps, and we can react to that. But after this public info session, we have a couple more meetings to take in any additional feedback and finalize recommendations, like Sean said, that we will be presenting to the school board in January of 2021. So some updates since the last meeting. Like I said, we've got 3 maps to share with you here tonight. When we calculate the enrollment for these options, we're estimating a functional capacity at the new middle school of 914 students, and that's the new building. So it's expanded built on a new site. Like Sean said, that new building is being built in the Admiral Byrd zone. And so it necessitates rezoning or a look at rezoning right out of the gate. But so we're looking at filling that new school with 914 students to give Admiral Byrd some relief, and then also to provide some relief to James Wood Middle, if at all possible. If when we're counting our estimates, we're counting any 6th through 8th grader who goes to Frederick County Public Schools that lives inside a zone. We're counting those students, assuming that they would attend their school based on the zone they live in. There are students that attend from out of zone, but those numbers are fairly small, and that's something that we're aware of, and we've been monitored. We know about the mobility, but for this district, the best way to estimate enrollment is counting the number of students that live in a zone, so that it's the school zone is relative to the population that lives within it. I mean, and the school can serve that population. And if there are students that attend outside of the county, for example, maybe teachers, students, or they're attending it for a special program per se, those students, we assume that they're remaining at the school that they attend if they don't attend within the county, if they don't live within the county. And we're working with data that was provided in May of 2020. And so we have been studying different things, 2019 versus 2020, because there is this whole impact of COVID and trying to understand assess the impact of that. And so we are looking at different things to make sure that we assess the impact of that as we work along. But the May 2020 is the basis for the estimates that we've been providing. So let's just get into some maps and tables and talk a little bit here. So these are your current boundaries. And what we did here is we have the whole Frederick County, but we've zoomed into just the area that's really the impact area. The green zone is the James Wood Middle School zone. The orange zone on the far right is the Admiral Byrd zone. And then the purple zone on the bottom is the Robert Ayler zone. You can see the current Robert Ayler is the green triangle on the map. And then the new Robert Ayler is the green triangle to the right that says new in parentheses. You can see that's in the Ayler zone, and there's a lot of population right around that school, as you guys probably know. And so as we develop options, that area that's around Ayler is all going to the new school, and every single option, but to a certain extent. And when I start sharing with the options with you, you'll see that is the area where most of the variation between these three maps occurs, and along this borderline between Byrd and Ayler and Wood down in the southern part of the district. But you could see, looking at the tables on the left, the utilization of Admiral Byrd certainly shows the need to provide some relief to them. They're at 115% utilization. James Wood is at 106% utilization. And so if you look at the total district, all of the seats and all of the middle school students in Frederick County, they're operating at 101% utilization. So and that's with Ayler at 713. Now the new middle school coming online is going to be 914 for the new Ayler. So that's going to bring that total utilization down below 100 and give us some flexibility and able to bring some relief to these schools. We've been looking at the free and reduced meals. You could see the race and ethnicity compositions of the schools that we've been studying them and looking at how they differ and how they compare to the district total versus from school to school. You'll see that there are imbalances in some schools as it relates to some of the demographics, and a lot of that is attributed to the density of population that's in the areas close to the school. And so we are being mindful of the demographics of the current zones and any new zone that we're creating. And we're trying to make improvements to demographics if we can, but we have to also, like Sean said, look at all elements of the criteria. And we can't, if we focus on only one element of the criteria, we start to deviate from the others. So if we tried to create a map that was perfectly balanced in terms of demographics, we would end up skewing away from transportation and proximity and even utilization balance of schools. But it's something that we're looking at and studying. We've also been looking at enrollment trends. So we're counting the numbers of students that live in each zone by grade level. And so this helps us see not only how many 6th through 8th graders live in a zone, but how many 5th graders are coming in, how many 4th graders. As kids age through the system, what is that? That gives you a lot of indicators of what enrollment's going to be in the future. And this helps us kind of understand trends and things like that. And so we're using this to kind of identify maybe not only what current estimates look like with current data, but also what's coming down the pipeline. And you see the down arrows are indicative of a downward trend, meaning that you're expected to have enrollment decline based off the students in the area. But it should be noted that this is really on the basis of the students that live in the area right now. On top of this, there's new construction happening. So there's a lot of construction going on in Snowden Bridge, and a lot of things going on down south in Stevens City and things like that. And then also along Admiral Byrd, there's a lot of construction happening in isolated spots in the county, like Sean had mentioned. So we're tracking that as well. We're trying to see if we can cover as many bases as possible as we look at this to make sure that no stone is left unturned and we fully understand the data that can impact enrollment. Feeder pattern splits are things that we've been studying. So how many schools are split? And then we try to look at how many splits are less than 25%. So if a school has to be split, say an elementary school, kids go to school at elementary, then they go to middle school. If there's not enough space at that middle school, they'll split the elementary to two different middle schools. So it's best practice, if you have to split a school, to split that school two ways, 50-50, a balanced split. It's what you want to try to avoid is to have something like a 95% of an elementary school go to one middle and only 5% of enrollment go to another. Thinking of kids, they're not only they're learning life skills and things like that, but they're also socializing, and they're also learning an important part about society and how to communicate and make friends and things like that. So we want to preserve that as they migrate from elementary to middle, that they can go to the next level with familiar faces, with friends, and they can maintain some of their social dynamics that they have. So we've been calculating the split information, and these split tables. There's a handout that you can download that has all these data in there, and the split tables are things that we look at to identify how schools are split, what's the percentage of splits that exist, and if we do see these really small splits, those are the ones we focus on, and we ask ourselves, can we fix these? Can we resolve a 5% split? And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't with as it sits. But so these are your current zones, and let's just get right into the first option here. So this is option red, the red option. And so when you look at the map, you can see the background color shows you the option, and the black outline shows you the current boundaries. And so when you look at this map, you could see that there was an area up here that's James Wood that gets fed into Admiral Byrd. Comments that we've received and feedback that we've received is currently Greenwood Mill Elementary is split up in that area. And one of the ways it was seen as an opportunity to have all of Greenwood Mill feed into Admiral Byrd, and then that would also give James Wood Middle School capacity relief. And so you'll see that this adjustment in the top where Greenwood Mill feeds into Admiral Byrd exists in all three options as it sits now. Keep in mind, these are all draft. That's why we highlight these as draft. Any of these maps are subject to change. We're not at the point where we're just going to pick one of these three maps and move it to the school board. It's possible we can make changes to these maps as we continue to study the things. But that Greenwood Mill adjustment, 100% feeding into Byrd, is something that you'll see in all three maps. There's also a small adjustment over here that's made between Ayler and Wood. And this is just one of the examples I was talking about where feedback from the public, where the current zone was actually dividing a rural community, but there was a cluster of homes in this street area that was splitting them. And so we have adjusted this so that community can all go to the same school, and we have that going to Ayler. You'll see that in all three options. Down here in this region along the border of Ayler, Byrd, and Wood is where there is the greatest amount of variation between the three options. You could see that we've drawn the map to encompass the new Ayler Middle School, and also some of the moving all of Greenwood Mill to Byrd put resulted in having too many students in Byrd. And so as a result, we've moved some of the western edge of Byrd in this map to James Wood in this option. I have a zoomed in map here to show you some more details. But before I go into the zoom, you could see the balance of utilization that exists. 96% is what we're working with the new expanded Ayler Middle School. And this does provide relief to Byrd Middle Schools down at 97% in this option. James Wood Middle is at 98%. No significant impact to the free and reduced meals as it relates in this. There is a little bit it creates a little bit further of a deviation from the average in terms of free and reduced meals at James Wood Middle, and that they do go up a slightly in free and reduced meal percentage. But the conversations with the committee was that as Snowden Bridge continues to build out in the northern part of the county, that's a middle class, middle income community. And so as middle income families continue to move into this area, the free and reduced meal percentages will balance out even more. No significant impact on race and ethnic, and the trends are really, we're seeing the development trends really are standard across the board in every single option. And what we're seeing, there's really no option is better for development or worse based off of where the developments are located. This map does impact 357 students. So we're trying to impact as few students as possible. And so that's not very bad. And knowing that we're moving, we're building a new school and creating a zone around that school, that does say a lot to trying to keep the impact at a minimum in this particular map. We do have still have some splits. We've tried to resolve some of these splits that exist on the map, and we're looking at the splits between that current and trying to improve them if at all possible. This map does have 4 splits that are less than 25, and those are primarily around Orchard View. We're trying to move as few students we're not moving any kids at the elementary or the high school level as part of this process. We're focused on middle school. And so as we make these adjustments, sometimes we end up with a split scenario that we can't control. But we're doing everything we can to be as proactive and mindful of the splits and adhering to best practices. I want to show you a little zoom here of this map for this option, so you can see kind of the area that we're talking about that would be impacted. On this map, the green zone line is the current zone, and so you could see that Chinkapin Drive, Somerset Drive, Lake Ridge Drive, these communities, Hackberry and Aspen, all of these communities would remain in Admiral Byrd in this option. There are a series of, we had to try to find, this area had a lot of students in it. So we had to try to find some way to split this area up, because what we were finding is if we move it all one way or the other, it overloads either Wood or it overloads Byrd. So we had to find a divide. You'll see on this, we divided the zones based off of separations between communities. So there are some apartments and townhomes on the western edge of this area. There's still some apartments up north on Lake Ridge, but in this area, there was a logical divide that we chose to have this area in these apartments off of Pocono and Timberlake and Paradise, in Surrey Club Lane. These areas would go to James Wood in this option. In terms of the Admiral Byrd to Ayler, looking at that, we're looking at Macedonia Church Road here. So pretty much if you have a Macedonia Church Road address in this map, that is the dividing line. So both sides of Macedonia Church Road and everything south of that would go to Ayler in this map. And then the map stretches along the center of White Oak. And so you could see Latigo Court, I think that's called, and this area would also go to Ayler in this red option. So Macedonia Church Road, is the zone line. And then we do split off some students that are in the communities on the far western edge of Bird to go to Wood, in addition to the area I talked about with Greenwood Mill for the red option. The green option does look similar with some other adjustments in this region. The green option still has the Greenwood Mill piece moved into Bird in every option to feed 100%, to resolve a feeder pattern split in that area. You'll see that the zones do have a balance of utilization, so we bring everything under 100%. James Woods at 98 and Bird is at 91% in this. So this option, you can see the movement is down in this area along the border between Bird and Ayler, where the area that was in the far west that remained in Bird that I discussed a little bit in the red option goes to Ayler in this map. And so this is just a different look in that this region right here, these two blocks, instead of staying in Bird, they go to Ayler, and that you'll see that creates a little bit of a swing in the numbers, and Ayler having 97% utilization and Bird having 91%. The demographics are relatively comparable in all three options, I would say, for these maps. This map does move 409 students, so there are more students impacted as a result of this particular map than the red map. But it does have fewer splits, less than 25%. So that's something that we're calculating and looking at. And as you start to look at this and you start to study these maps, you'll see there's pros and cons with every map, but no map is going to be perfect, and that there are certain elements of the map that you wish that we can make better, but we just cannot do so. So we do still have some splits that we've been monitoring and trying to resolve if possible, and still working through them. Looking at a zoom in of the area here, you'll see that this is the same perspective that I showed you on the red map, but this is the green option. And in this green option, this area that shows purple here off of Lakeside Drive and Aspen and Hackberry and Chinkapin, Lake Ridge, Somerset, these communities in this area right here, instead of staying at Bird, they would move to Ayler in order to balance utilization, give Bird some capacity relief, and still try to keep communities intact if at all possible. And so that's the difference between the red and the green option. That the primary difference between these two options is this community right here going to Bird in the red option, and in this purple area would go to Ayler in the green option. Let's look at the blue option. So the blue option is one that has the same adjustments that I discussed. Greenwood Mill feeding into Bird entirely. We have the same adjustment for the community split piece that existed in the current zones. I forgot to mention there's another small area out here with just may not even have a student in it. It may be a very small populated area. It probably has a couple of kids. I can't remember. But this was an adjustment that we made to resolve a very small split from middle to high school. And it was something that we made to just try to resolve a very small split. So this is the one area that was where Frederick County Middle School was impacted. As Sean said, we're trying to minimize the impact for Frederick County Middle on this because they were recently rezoned. But this is one area that we've considered to resolve a very small split. But again, the difference between the three maps still exists down in this bottom area between Bird, Ayler, and Wood. And it's instead of the area that I talked about, the planning block that was in flux between the red and green map, this area stays in Bird like it does in red, but moves in green. But instead, we move a community over here into Ayler in order to balance utilization and give relief to Bird and Wood. You'll see that the utilization of the schools, we do achieve a balance, and that we do have Bird at 90%. Ayler's at 98% in this map. And I know that the committee of all three maps, this is one that their biggest concern was that it's on the high side of utilization. And there are other, the committee has other thoughts about all of the maps. and the things that trying to address ways to resolve some of the imbalances in any of the statistics. But this is one that they had mentioned as a little high for Ayler on this map. And so the demographic trends are really following the same trends of what we've seen on the other three maps. This map does impact 424. So I believe this map impacts the greatest number of all of students among all three options. And we also have some splits. They're really comparable to the current. You know, what we try to do is try not to make it worse in terms of splits and try to make it better if we can, since we have this opportunity. And so the splits kind of are what they are, but it's things that we're studying. I'll show you another zoom in of this area that's impacted in this blue option. And so, like I said, we still have Macedonia Church. Macedonia Church is the line for every map, for red, green, and blue. Macedonia Church Road feeds into Ayler. But the difference between the blue map and the green map is the green map had this region feeding into Ayler, that lake, that Hackberry and Chinquapin and Lakeside. That stays in Bird in this map. And instead, we come over to the east edge of this area, and we pull some of these communities into Ayler instead. And these include, let me see, I'm trying to pronounce a couple of these: Falabella Drive, Dartmoor Drive, Clydesdale Drive, and some of these Caspian Drives, these communities through here, and White Oak, everything that's sort of on the other side of White Oak in this map, these communities would all feed into Ayler. And you see it stretches up far north, but really there's no way in or out of this community to the far north other than going through this other community in the south. And so we preserved it and maintained it intact, so a bus wouldn't have to go in through a neighborhood, pick up kids at the far end, and then go out of the neighborhood to go to a different school, trying to avoid those types of things for transportation efficiency. The townhomes that we've talked about moving into James Wood, this section of the current Bird zone feeds into James Wood in every single option that with the three draft options that we've come to and drafted so far. So those are the three options, and what we're really wanting for next steps are looking for you as members of the public to participate in a survey. So if one of the things you can do is, if you go to the school district's rezoning page, that will take you to a page that we are maintaining. It takes you to, let's see, let me just click on it here so you can see what happens. We'll go to the FCPS middle school rezoning page. If you go to the district, and you can click on learn more about the rezoning process. What this does is takes you to a page that we are managing and maintaining. On there, you'll see information of the latest rezoning options. You could pull this up and it'll pull, you could see maps that show details of the maps that we have listed here. We've also got information in the public information session too, is the link that has all the materials pertinent for tonight's meeting. So you could see that there is a video recording of this will be forthcoming. We've got a handout that has all the stats and maps in a handout for you. And the presentation that I'm giving tonight is also available here. One of the things I don't see on here that we need to include is the link to the general feedback form, or for the survey, which that's something that we will get listed on here, posted on here here shortly. That shows a link to the actual survey. You can get that by going to, if you go to the story map, our presentation, that'll take you to at the bottom of the, let me find my presentation here. Go. You'll see that there's a link here for the survey, and you can go to this survey, and this survey gives you the form that we need for you to fill out that has the that for the public information session. And this survey will open here here in the next minute or two. It's something that is open and available for you to fill out immediately following this presentation. And so the survey is an important part that we really want for you to fill out. And we're going to be taking your feedback and input and looking at input that you're providing and seeing if we can make any adjustments to help drive changes to these maps and bring us closer to the objectives and the criteria. There's also a general feedback survey that's listed on the rezoning page. You can go in there if you'd like and just give us general feedback, but we are looking for specific, more focused input via the public information session survey that we have drafted so far here and prepared for you tonight. There's also links on the page for the online map that you can access, as well as other materials. All the materials, if I go back to the web page here and go back to the home page, you can also go back and look at prior meetings and see materials that were shared at prior meetings and prior versions of maps and things like that. And so that's something that that we encourage you to go on here and look at this, look at the materials and fill out the survey and give us your input. And it's really important for us to get that input and hear from you. So next steps for us are to continue to study the input. We have another committee meeting in December that we're going to be preparing for, and continuing to work towards finalizing a plan to present to the board in January. And that's all I have. We really appreciate your time and coming and participating in this and observing this presentation. I don't see any questions. As I mentioned before, there is a Q&A section in here. If you have any questions, we'll give you just another minute or so that you could type in any questions and see if you had anything that you wanted to ask. We do have the committee and the staff here at the meeting tonight that we could answer anything. But if there are no questions, then we can go ahead and adjourn. So I don't see any questions coming through, Dr. Savine. So would you like to go ahead and conclude for us?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Cropper. Once again, I extend my appreciation for you and your team members for this comprehensive approach and the options to this point that you're sharing with the public. I also extend my appreciation to staff as well as our committee members, in particular our parents. We're committed to being very transparent, and we will open this up as we've had this posted on our website throughout this process. But we do have a communication plan to increase awareness. We welcome the feedback. Once we receive the feedback from the surveys, as Mr. Cropper has referenced, the committee will meet again in December and make any possible adjustments. And then we anticipate coming to the school board in January. So just extend my appreciation to everyone for joining in tonight, and we look forward to receiving your feedback to the survey.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. And one last thing before we go, we did have a question come in from a member of the public, and the question was how do some of the plans affect students near Merriman's land? And I'm not sure. One of the features that that you can see on the site on the interactive map is a zoom to subdivision. I did go to Merriman's Landing and Merriman's Estates and Merriman's Chase, and these are all. I believe that this is the area you're talking about. That it is in the Merriman's Lane, and so this area is in. This area is in James Wood, and it is not impacted. And I would say that if that doesn't answer your question, what you could always do is if you have any question about where you're going to go, what I would encourage you to do is you could first off go into the interactive map, croppermap.com/FCPSVA, and you could go type in your address, and it'll take you to an area. And then it'll tell you here if it's impacted or not impacted in any particular option. And if that doesn't get you where you need to go, or you can't answer your questions, then please call us or email us, and we'll make sure that we can get some clarification for you. But I think that's all we have. And I really want to appreciate it. Thanks again for everybody for coming. And we hope you all have a great night and look forward to hearing from you on the survey. And you all have a great night. Thank you very much.